Good evening, everyone. Zachary Epps, co-chair of the Finance Committee, bringing it to order for our June 2nd, 2026 meeting. I'll start with a roll call, starting to my left.
Charles Burdell Williams, present.
Mia Blitzstein, present.
Ross Whiting, present.
Caroline Watts, present.
Daniel Schultz, present.
Robin Murphy, present.
All right, I will await a motion to consider the minutes from our May 2026 meeting.
So moved.
We got a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. The minutes are approved from our May meeting, and I'll hand it over to administration.
All right, thank you, Zachary. As you know, at the last legislative meeting, we approved a brand new food service vendor to service Cheltenham School District, and that vendor was Chartwell's. So being as this is the last finance meeting until the start of the next school year, when Chartwell's will begin servicing the school district, wanted to give them the opportunity to present a little bit about themselves and a little bit of information about Chartwell's. So we will begin with their presentation, and I'll turn it over.
Thank you, everybody, for having us. I'm Sarah Bridget, the Vice President of the Mid-Atlantic. This is Diana Cook, Area Director. We are really excited to be here. We have the presentation, but a lot of it's in the handout, so whatever you're comfortable with. We are happy to be here. We've been here prior to this. We've been here about 30 years. So we had a great day today with Mr. Swaggart. We went around to all the schools. A lot of the employees recognized us, which was great. Excited to see us back, and we're excited as well. If you could change the next slide. Again, coming out of the gate, our commitment is proactive leadership, making sure that we are getting the program to the best program the district wants to see for the students and for the community. So listening, making sure the leadership is there to make that happen. Elevating the food quality, obviously, is vital to getting some of those participation numbers up. Intensive nutrition and student education program regarding engagement of food, right? And getting kids involved is part of getting that participation to where it needs to be. And then really operational excellence. Having the right leaders on board to really drive the program, right? Not only on the education portion, but the food quality, how things are seen, how food looks, how it's perceived, the quality of the food safety. And then obviously the last one, more student voice, hearing the students, hearing about what they like, what they don't like, and how we incorporate it in the menus. So again, some of the simple ways that we're going to go out of the gate and elevating the food is more scratch cooking, global flavors, and trends. We really work hard with the regional chef and then also the corporate chefs, figuring out where the trends are, where students are eating and what they're seeing on the outside, because obviously the exposure is great on the outside, so they want to see all those things in the inside. And we've got this special challenge of taking those national school lunch standards and getting them exciting, right? Because we've got to follow those restrictions of sodium and salt and fat. Again, menus shaped by student feedback, getting them involved, and then also our waste reduction, best practices, right? Sustainability, those type of items will be throughout our food service operations, and then staff training. If you change to the next slide. Our Chartwell's K-12's philosophy is that food is more than just food, is an experience. So that comes out through our student engagement programs, our global flavors. So Diane, take it away.
Sure. We can actually switch to the next slide if you would like to. So part of bringing food in the door is making sure that the food that we're bringing in the door is suitable. One, that it meets the K-12 component, especially if it's for students. Outside of that, for adults and catering, we can do a little bit different. But that all of the companies that we purchase from, those companies are very well vetted. They have the proper safety measures. It comes from great places. And Food Buy, who is our procurement partner, is doing all of that work for us. One of the nice pieces of that is we have a amazing recall program. I mean, you hear all the time in the news, you know, something in a grocery store or an item that has been recalled. We have the exact same protocol. We get alerts automatically sent to us by our vendor. We get alerts automatically sent to us by Food Buy that are national. And then we can drill down by a list of the exact location, the exact lot number, the exact everything, and be able to react to that very quickly. And in addition to, we have a great resource when it comes to which vendors we choose in the area. So today on our tour, as an example, you know, there's some things that are really great to change, and then other things that maybe not so great to change, right? So the providers that are bringing in the food, we would like to try to keep as much of that consistent as we possibly can. Maybe some of the products would change, but the vendors as consistent as possible. But with Food Buy, we also have that ability to pick and choose, which is very nice. We'll go to the next slide. So our student engagement, which I know Sarah touched on, so a couple of different things. So we have events and activities for all different age groups. Mood Boost, as an example, one of my favorites, brings in those little characters that you can see on the bottom of the screen right there, really focused on elementary school aged, and bringing that excitement into what kind of foods fuel your mood. Nutrition Game On is a newer elementary school program for us, which brings in that excitement of little exchanging cards and all of these pieces. So a program similar to this, as an example, we at a local district, I had a parent reach out on our company website. So, you know, this goes to, it's kind of like calling the 800 number, right? It goes somewhere, and by the, you know, it filters down to you. Well, this parent reached out in search of this strawberry cards. This is what the complaint comment was, in search of these strawberry cards, because their child, who was in 3rd grade, was so jealous that somebody else had a strawberry card and they did not. So we were able, after hearing this, obviously we sent an entire pack of strawberry cards so that there would be no arguing over who had the strawberry card. And Global Eats is another one that brings in the creativity from different areas, different cultures, and that variety. We see it more in the middle school and the high school, where those flavor profiles are changing a little bit, and they want that spicy or ethnic creations in comparison to what they're seeing outside. I know a great example locally has been the ramen bowl, where we set up for ramen bowls. So it's just a great experience. You can flip to the next slide. One of the pieces that was a large takeaway for us was an initiative for the school on sustainability. And so we have some programs already in place. And then with those programs, also the ability to partner with the district, with some school, with some student organizations, with the board, with community, and really pull this all together as not necessarily a pretty package, but pull it all together. So we have a program called Waste Match, which gives us the ability for tracking. It helps us with our ordering. It helps us with our the waste that we would have from food waste, from a idea of how much food to prepare. And then also when we're preparing food, example, we're cutting celery. How much of that celery are you cutting off? When you're cutting a lot of vegetables, how much of that are you wasting? If you are cutting some raw meats, which I would say we tend, other than for catering, not necessarily to do, but are you trimming off more than just the fat? Are you wasting meat off there as well? But then also providing sustainable solutions. I know we saw today, for example, sustainable trade. The ones that we do still throw them away. And looking at options of, are there options to bring in regular trade? Do we have dishwashers to wash the regular trade? Or what is that balance of how much do the trays cost? How much does the soap cost? What does that affect on the environment? If we have these biodegradable trays, what does that affect? But really being able to look And then an important piece for me is that farm fresh, and I'll say even the school and farm to school aspect. We have had really great success in doing farmers markets where we bring in produce. Thank you. We bring in produce and we're able to give that produce out in a nice little bag, but also do some tastings, hand out some recipes. That way, when that produce goes home, there's a recipe orchestrated with it so that the parents can do something with the produce other than go, oh, look, produce. But that just those pieces, and the students really seem to love that. It's been a huge hit for me personally at several of my districts this past year and has gone really well. One of the things that I always like to say, whether you call this innovation or you call it part of an education, is I look at all of our cafeterias and the more so from an elementary standpoint where they're just learning, but our cafeterias are an extension of the classroom. And we're helping them learn how to choose a healthy meal. What does a complete tray look like? How many vegetables and fruits should you have? What do portion sizes look like? And all of that control piece that comes with that. And I hope that when they're adults, they're making healthier decisions. We can flip to the next slide. So this slide and maybe a page in your book just gives a little bit more detail on what I have mentioned with our waste program. Essentially showcasing the same things that I said, so I won't go into detail. But it's a great program that we do want to initiate here with the team. But I think part of initiating that is for us to, to get in and start training. And as we're training, build these programs into it. So we can flip to the next slide. So part of our plan, right? So it's one of those where, one day you have one person in the kitchen and then you turn around, you close the door and somebody else walks in the next day, right? And if it was that easy, everyone would do it, right? So part of our transition plan, and it started today, probably started before today, but part of that plan is to engage and incorporate the team. So today when we were going around, I gave everyone my business card. I've had one phone call already, which is great. And we also put up this flyer that has a QR code for them to go on and initiate the process of applying. We did have a few of the associates that said, well, I have a flip phone, so I don't know if that's going to work. And that's okay. We have computer rings. We have people that can help. They have family members. And at the end of the day, it's not the end all be all of how to apply for the job because we'll have a meeting in person and can help somebody through that. But it was, like Sarah said, it was really great walking around to each one of the kitchens today and meeting people. There was a young gentleman actually that was helping cleaning a table who was involved in the tasting. And he goes, well, which one were you guys? And so we explained, he goes, oh, okay, great. So it's nice to make those connections. But part of this and, part of me handing out my business card to everybody today is I want them to have a person to communicate with, right? A person to contact. And until we find that person for here, I will always be here from that perspective, but until we find the director for this location, I want them to have somebody that they are comfortable reaching out to. And I will be here through that process. So we'll keep the communication going. I had mentioned to Josh, I said, I think we're going to probably go through about 10,000 questions between the two of us, but all of those questions and all of those answers help us get to where we need to be. With the team, part of that onboarding process is we will set up a meeting right at the end of the school year to truly onboard, kind of go over who we are as a company for those that don't know. Get some uniform sizes, go over some basic information, get them completely onto our systems from a payroll perspective. So that way, when they come back at the start of the school year, that piece of it is very seamless. Because at that point, we'll have a back to school meeting where we'll go through and we'll train on station standards and our expectations, and really go through that alignment and make sure that we're providing the right tools.
And what's really nice is we've got a lot of accounts in the area that can provide that additional support, because really execute the menus. We're really retraining the staff, right, on how to do that. And we've got Josh, and for the summer, we've got we've quite a few chefs that will come in, right, some directors to help with that additional support, not just the leader we pick on board, but that support is one of the many things that makes Chartwell's different, is that we've got the regional chef, we've got the dietitian, we've got the marketing, all those players ensure that the director's not here by themselves, right? You got that support, and that's how we elevate those programs to get to what we hope that you guys want, is a better, obviously, program for the students, and that's how we get there.
And just in the county, we have 3 other districts. And so we have support right here in the area. And as Sarah said, we have a support commitment from one of our local chefs to be here for the summer just to assist, minus his vacation and those types of things that happen in the summer. But just that dedicated plan and commitment to ensure that if we miss any beat, that it's not on purpose, right? That we want to make sure that we're dotting I's, crossing T's, and getting the full process. And then more importantly, when we have the team that will be your team day in and day out, that those of us that have been in here and we've been supporting, that communication with them is our same communication with you. And that we're not missing to giving them some information that's crucial for them, and that transition and that handoff is very good.
So we provided our cards today. Obviously, communication is going to be key, right? In terms of listening to everyone and getting some feedback as we get on board. Always like to say we only know what we know, right? So we'll have to do a lot of communication with the administration of the team to really start to move forward and get the programs to where we need them to be. So we'll be here, cards are there. Welcome to answer any questions you have right now.
Why don't we open it up?
How will families access menus?
So, yeah, absolutely. So we have, it'll be a link through NutriSlice. So once I'll explore what the food service, the dining page looks like now, and we'll figure out who we work with to update that. But we utilize NutriSlice, so it'll be a link that they click on right from your webpage that takes them right to our menus. They really want to look at other menus. They can pick another school and do some comparisons as well. And it's very user friendly. I have a 3rd grader, and my 3rd grader, he attends a Chartwell school, and he goes on to NutriSlice on his, they know more than we do about technology though. But he goes on NutriSlice and selects, and he likes the fact that he can see the pictures, because the pictures, even though he can read the description and read all about it, the picture sometimes says it all. Because like, as an example, today at lunch, as we were walking around, they had the nachos with the Doritos, but the Doritos, they all said, oh, this is great because the Doritos are a special thing. And it's funny because my son does the exact same thing on the NutriSlice app. He'll click on it and he'll go, oh, it's Doritos this week. I want that.
Great. Also the payment system, will the payment system be the same, or there's school accounts and families can like is it similar, or how's that work?
We use School Cafe.
Okay, the School Cafe does the point of service part of great. And so School Cafe also essentially they can do itemized, not quite itemized, they can do a meal, but then they'll show you if they buy a snack or something like that.
Mhm.
Correct. All right. Good. School Cafe.
Just a follow-up to that. If families at the end of this school year end up having a credit on their account, will that be refunded? Like, how will that be managed?
I mean, overpayment in their account?
Yes.
So if they still have a student in the school, that'll roll over to next year.
Oh, okay, so it will just automatically transfer. Okay,
Okay.
because I know I have an auto being bill set up, and I'm like, I still have money in there, yeah.
Fine. Go, you have that.
Thank you. I'm new to this, so I think it was So Wes, you were describing the transition plan. It sounds like, and excuse me if this is a question all of you know the answer to. Sounds like you are rehiring the staff that have worked here. So they have to reapply for their positions
They do.
with your company.
So, what I'll say is all the hourly
Mhm.
staff that is here, so not the management team, but the hourly staff.
Mhm.
As long as they choose to apply and everything background wise, everything else checks out, they would be hired. For example, we'll ask them at this meeting to bring all of their documentations to do their I-9. We will ask them to bring a copy of their pay stub so that we can see what they were making, so we can ensure that they're paid them the same that they were making. And do all of those pieces in alignment, just to ensure that they stay whole.
So if all of that went 100% smoothly, then the students walking in would see a difference in the food, but not a difference in the faces.
We need those employees. That
We do.
that helps our
Yeah, they
transition.
have-
Absolutely.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
know how the buildings
Yes.
work, they know.
Exactly.
I forgot my question. I'll remember.
Or you gotta think about something else.
Yeah. Okay. See about how happy the kids will be to see the same people.
Just a couple quick ones, because and this is really from curiosity. Obviously we made the decision already. So how local are the vendors that you all use?
So, a fun fact, right, from a produce vendor, some of our produce comes from DoD, so like a government agency where produce comes from. When we purchase produce, we can purchase through a purveyor relatively locally. They're out of Lancaster. But what they're able to do in season, and in Pennsylvania, we know that our in season time is typically when we're not in school. But we do have some in season. I'll give an example. We had a potato, and where the potato, we were able to narrow down on specifically the farm, and we were able to put up a sign to say, this is the farm that this came from. This is about the farmer, and really kind of bring that to light with it. So it depends. I would say like some of our purveyors are right out of the Philadelphia area. Some are Lancaster, some maybe a little bit further. It really just depends.
But it sounds like regional is the farthest than where it goes, which is really encouraging. And then the programming that you all talked about, it seems some of it is really run through Chartwells. And so could you kind of talk, and kind of saw like the voting machines, it seems like
Sure.
you all run things like that. And then, but the educational programs, are those like, they're getting placards during lunch? Or can you talk a little bit more about like how that's actually?
And I would say it's also open. There's not necessarily a set, this is the way we do it and it's cookie cutter. And so no matter where we go, this is the way it's going to be done. It's very cookie cutter. So for example, you can see a student choice, and it could be a touch screen where they say yes or no, or pick the entree. It could be where we give out little tokens and they put the token, and for anyone who was at the tasting. And we tried to do that. I know we were a little short on time, but we had these little tokens that you could drop in a container. And so it was done that way. So the programs come with the pretty marketing, right? So they come with all of that collateral, but then within this district, they are able to pick and choose which ones they want to run, which ones would go best for here, and really solicit the student advice and what they're looking for in order to showcase the next one. One of my favorites for the older students is student choice. And it's because you can put two similar items or two completely different items against each other. And then whichever one wins, you menu it the next week. But it's like a sudden, just it's an impact to say, I made this choice.
Where we take the Discovery Kitchen programs where we're doing really sampling. And we've had principals who've sat there and done sampling with our chocolate hummus or something. So we really engage as far as the district wants to engage, but we have the ability to do it from the kitchen. So, right,
We
so
have-
either way.
A district that their entire kindergarten class has a pizza program. And so we go into each kindergarten class and our chef shows them how to stretch the dough and make the dough. But then they make these little, like, I'll call them English muffin pizzas, right? They make their own little pizzas that day for a snack for themselves. But it really brings out that freshness of, it's tomatoes that make this tomato sauce and, what all those ingredients are to pull together pizza, which almost all kids love pizza.
Yes. Yeah. And then you bring it to my last question. It sounds like which of those, you can do all of those programs or one of them or maybe not none of them, but it's like to the discretion of the school district, how many of them, or is it the plan to transition us to where we're using all of them?
It's a plan to transition where we can utilize as much as possible. I would say I like to have something once a month, and that something could be today's National Cookie Day, today's National Taco Day, like all of those pieces where you can incorporate something into it, because it just changes that look and that dynamic. And like a very old school terminology, monotony breaker, right? It just changes the routine of, I see the same line, the same seat, the same people, the same everything. So something in there when it changes just sparks excitement.
One thing, thank you for this presentation. One thing that caught my eye was the Green Spaces for Growth program. Do you have like the materials to bring in to do hydroponic gardening?
But yeah, and so from what I understand, they might have some.
Okay.
But yeah, we also could bring in additional, and I've seen those go really, like, an example at an elementary school where it's the lettuce is grown and then the students make their own salad with that.
I would love to see that.
And it's usually a snack item, but something to show that engagement of you just grew this.
I think it's challenging, like, I know that in the past several years, we've talked about having some like raised garden beds at elementary schools, but because of the climate here, it doesn't really lend itself to successful outdoor vegetable gardens, but I love the idea of creating hydroponic experiences for the kids so that they can actually see something grow and then they can also.
Yes.
And we can partner, example, like with, I know Girl Scouts, they all have programs that they do where they have an initiative or a project that they need to complete. And I know in districts, we worked with somebody at the district who was completing that project that wanted to do a garden or wanted to initiate within like a high school, what does a compost program look like, or what could we do with our food waste? And especially when those programs are student initiated, you get that buy-in, and probably much more than if we would wholesale initiate a program like that. When a student initiates it and pulls that through, we talked about earlier, even the share tables and that waste aspect, we would call it like be a waste warrior. Right? And if we are able to work with the student group at the schools, I think that would take off so much more, that sharing idea of if you pick up something and you're not going to eat it, especially if it's wrapped, and you put it on this table and someone else would be able to pick that up. But those things, we advertise them, we will put them out there, but it's not until you really get that buy-in from the students that they really start engaging with it.
I know that we also have high school clubs that are interested in sustainability and planting, and I just would love to see our high schoolers also take that like to our elementary schools, to our middle schools, wherever possible, to both be like stewards of sustainability, to be leaders in our district. I love elevating kids to be the leaders of the initiatives because everybody buys in more. And the younger kids can see themselves as they get older, able to take on a leadership role like that. So this is just sort of food for thought later, no pun intended, but just to think about how to work, inter-age connections in wherever possible to facilitate any of these programs happening.
What?
This is a totally out of left field question, but I'm just curious about this from a partnership perspective. Your materials lead off with a statement about food insecurity growing in Pennsylvania. And I know last fall, with the cuts to SNAP benefits for a lot of families, a number of schools that I work with in different school districts, we organized drives to help families buy food because of what was happening. And I know during the COVID shutdowns, districts worked to provide food for families. Is that something that Chartwell's has done? That kind
Yeah.
of,
I mean, we do it by individual district basis on what they want to do, whether
Right.
that's the Thanksgiving, you're identifying, families during Thanksgiving time, whether there's local farm markets that we connect with, whether there's donations we bring in. So there's a variety of
Mhm.
things that we do depending on what drives the community. Again, that's part of our engagement that we love to do. So there's something that's big and that we can tack on to, we do that.
We've assisted with some backpack programs. I know one of my districts, we work with their food pantry is actually right adjacent to one of their schools. And so when they do the pickups and everything, we work with them.
Mr. Schultz?
Thank you for this presentation. Welcome back. And so I had a couple questions around data. And so first I want to just give a shout out to all of the green programming and focus on biodegradable, when something's disposable. I know that seems like to be a shift maybe across the whole industry over the past since pre-COVID, because I think before we had a lot of styrofoam, and so it's great to hear that we're moving off of that. So participation rates, I know in the past it has been hard for me as a board member to have a real sense of whether we are serving our students well through our food program. So somewhat because we're not running it directly, but it's also just the data to determine whether students are enjoying the food that they're eating versus eating it because it's their only choice, or even not eating it when it's their only choice. So I'm curious how you approach thinking about what your target participation rate is, and within Cheltenham, we do a lot of try to be thoughtful around disaggregating data across various like race, socioeconomics, whatever it may be. Do you all look at data in that way as well?
Oh, financial numbers all day. I mean, it's the health of the program, really. So go ahead, what do you do in your district?
So two parts. One from a student feedback. We do have a survey mechanism that would be offered to the schools to whether or not that would be something that we would want to do. That once a year we would survey, and usually it's high school, some middle school, high school, where we would ask student feedback. And then the elementary schools, it gets sent to the parent. And the survey feedback comes back that it was a parent, that it was a student, the age group, the school, all of those pieces. Sarah will tell you, I'm a very analytical person, and so I love diving into data. And I'll come back and talk about it anytime. So there's that, so that we can get that actual feedback. Because there's a difference between students eating because they have to eat and students eating because they want to eat. So there is a difference. And we want them to want to eat, not just have to eat. So there's that part. And then when it comes to the participation data, I would say, I don't know that we necessarily have the race, that aspect of it. We see a little bit if that question is asked in the surveys. But in the participation data, we would take your data that you already have for a specific school. And then we would take that data to our data of the participation and break it down with breakfast being separate than lunch, and showcase how many students are participating in the program for each day. And I look at that and I get data as specific as to what menu were we serving that day, because we can look at it from our production records and say, well, obviously the first choice that day was not a winner, the second choice rolled out. So let's look at the first choice and see what else we can do, right?
Yeah, and I would say from a social economics status, we'll look at like schools with like free and reduced percentages and enrollment. And we can do a comparison of where we look in terms of breakfast participation, lunch participation. Right now, it's all free breakfast in Pennsylvania, so we like to drive to like at least 20%. But we can dig down to that data if that's something you want to look at.
I'm not, yeah, I was more curious and also just what to expect myself in future as we get updates on the food program. My other question, so thank you very much, that's very helpful. My other question is around the breakfast program and just how do you approach breakfast as opposed to lunch? Because I know lunch is going to be a hot lunch and prepared as breakfast. Grab and go. How do you approach the breakfast?
I think we start off with a menu that's similar,
Mhm.
and then we can expand on it. So in particular, at a high school, it's nice to have, if they can come to the cafeteria area, it's nice to have hot options. It's nice to have more than one option for breakfast. I like that option for elementary school as well. Sometimes it's possible and sometimes it's not. It really depends on where students enter into the building and how much time they have from when they enter into the building. What I have gathered today as an example from what I saw were a lot of bags that were ready to go, meaning that they would take the bag and probably take that to their classroom to eat. Right? So we're always cognizant of, do you send containers that they can't open themselves? Do you send containers that have syrup? Because the teachers love us for that. Custodians love us for that because it ends up everywhere else. But all of those pieces, but it's finding that right placement. Maybe it's breakfast carts as an example of where we have carts where maybe bus drop off is in one area and parent drop off is in another area. And you have a cart in each one of those areas so that you're capturing students as they come in the door. But it's making breakfast more accessible and making it easier for them to not necessarily have to go seek out so that it's front and center. We have a lot of marketing collateral around the idea, and I always think breakfast is the most important meal. Like you're starting your day, and especially a student who's coming in and has food insecurities that may not have this at home. We want to be able to provide that for them, and we want them to not feel bad if they're taking a breakfast. It's free to everybody, which is great. I love that Pennsylvania does that.
And I think too, there's not one fits all. Like it's rare where we're going in, it's all through the classroom and that's all we'll do. Like we will make recommendations based on each school district bus drop off section, because that's what we find will work the best and get the participation up. Because again, all the schools work like little kingdoms and they're all different. And we know that. So we will adjust that program based on that and based on what really the administration and the principal see is the best way to get through. Because there is, right, breakfast in the classroom doesn't always work, right?
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, writing last call. You do have emails. Yeah. One more email you'll get. Tonight. Yeah. Yeah, sincerely thank you for coming out tonight, making your presentation, more context. We're also parents, as you heard, so we have the double perspective. But yeah, if there's nothing else, I'll hand it back over to administration and free you all for the rest of the evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks for
it.
being
I'm
here.
excited to be here.
Yeah.
I
love orchid, I'm just saying.
Trying the menu.
Like any. Right, no pressure.
Delicious thinking.
We're then
It's a kiosk survey, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. 5 stars, I'm looking for 5 stars.
All right, good evening, everyone. We went a little bit out of order for the sake of allowing the Chartwell's personnel to not be here all night and listen to our budget presentation. But we'll get right into it. We'll look at our interim financial statements, adding capital projects and food service to that reporting as well, so that information is more transparent and out there for the public. After that, we'll look at the final budget, what the final budget looks like for June 30th, 2026. We will take a look at two important agenda items separately, one being the transportation contract renewal clause and about a recommendation on whether to exercise that clause or not. The next item being the MCIU cost plan, which is the list of services that the MCIU provides for the district annually that we're trying to get in the rotation to approve every May and June. And last but not least, legislative meeting approvals on June 9th for all of the budget items and annual approvals. There are a lot of slides. I will not spend a lot of time on a lot of slides. If you would like me to stop or you have a question, I'm happy to do so. So for the interim financial information, I will do my best to summarize each of these slides down to one sentence. Maybe a run-on sentence, but so as we discuss every month, we have this is a cash basis of reporting, so we're always focusing on cash. As you recall, a lot of the money being spent out of the capital reserve is still sitting in the general fund payable to the capital reserve, so that accounts for most of our cash withdrawals. You can see the reduction in cash and the reduction in interfund payables. That's the highlight on this slide. Looking at revenue year over year, we have $130 million of revenue in each year and $117 million expenditures each year, and that is just a coincidence, not anything really glaring there. So we'll flip over to what makes the detail of those two line items. That was way more than one sentence. That's all right. I can't help myself.
Next month's challenge.
Looking at revenue in the district on the state side, again, this is driven by real estate tax collection primarily. On the state side, I've been a business manager for 10 years, and every June 1st of every year I've been a business manager is when the state pays out most of its subsidies for the entire year. Last year, they paid out on May 29th. So that's why it looks like we have a drop in state source revenue, because we got a lot of that money a day early. So this doesn't indicate a drop in revenue. It just indicates a one-day timing when we receive our state source revenue. Reduction in federal revenue, again, last year was the final year for ESSER, and we recognized some ESSER income in that final year. Things to point out on the expenditure side, we are not experiencing a 1.1 million drop in special education. We are seeing a drastic slowdown in invoicing for a lot of special education expenditures, particularly in the charter school realm. In the past 2 months, we received hundreds of thousands of dollars of invoices for charter school tuition that relates to the prior year. So we're getting those bills later and later. Charter schools are reconciling later and later. Probably partially coincides with the late passage of the state budget, and probably with the financing woes and concerns on the charter school side. We're also behind on some of our MCIU cost plan payments that makes up that difference. So there's still some reconciliation to be done to calculate what that projected year-end balance will be. Again, pointing out on the operations side, we spent $1.5 million on that roof grant. That's buried here in our operations expense. And we are one payment behind in transportation. That doesn't represent a reduction in transportation expense either. So had we been caught up and have we not spent the CHS roof grant, we wouldn't have 117 million. It would be a little bit more. So looking at our graph as to where we will end up at the end of the year, we have a lot of revenues to collect for the month of June. So obviously we hope that exceeds our budget, and we hope this flattens out.
Good.
So we're just shooting for that gap at the end of the year, that structural stability. Looking at our local tax collections, We had a 3% tax increase last year. We're only experiencing a 1.6% increase in real estate tax collection that is due to some reverse assessment appeals from commercial entities. We will continue to see those into next year. That's one of the, as we'll discuss later, one of the biggest drivers of the budget. Earned income taxes still remain strong year over year. Real estate transfer taxes are starting to slow down, which is a little concerning going into the end of the year and going into the spring. We would expect to see that remain strong, but overall, we're still only 1% off the prior year. Delinquent real estate taxes, seeing an uptick in those collections is a good sign as we're collecting some of the outstanding balance. And because of the move in the Federal Reserve and the increase in inflation, primarily driven by market forces and oil prices, we're not seeing an interest rate reduction we were expecting. So we're still holding very steady on our return on our cash investment. So we are not seeing a significant year-over-year reduction. We were budgeting 1.75 million, 1,750,000. We were expecting that rate to go down, but we're still in the same spot. So that's the silver lining in all of this mess. Any questions on the general fund interim financial information?
Quick question. You mentioned the charter school. It occurs to me it would be very helpful to, especially since it's an advocacy opportunity for us to, maybe not monthly, but regularly get a sense of what we're spending year over year on charter school costs overall, not necessarily broken down by special education or not. So that's just a data point, maybe request to consider, but what are we expecting those numbers to be lower this year because of the change at the state level?
So our charter school enrollment has remained very flat. It's been between 130 and 140 students, the vast majority of which are cyber charter. I think 85% of those students attend a cyber charter school rather than a brick and mortar school. So students, the students that are attending charter schools just don't want to be in a school building, and that's why they've opted to switch to a cyber. We spend $3.5 million annually. Even though the state has been changing its formula, we have declining enrollment. So when you take the same number of expenditures and divide it by the declining enrollment, which is how the charter school tuition is calculated, it doesn't necessarily pull your tuition rate down. It keeps it inflated even with some of the changes at the state. So the changes in the formula at the state level are a cost reduction, not a cost mitigation. So our costs have remained relatively stable as a result of those changes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We can go back. All right, on the capital project side, I won't spend a lot of time on this. We have spent $11 million throughout the year. That is for the stadium project, for Glenside, for Cedar Brook, and we collected $15 million in bond revenue. And that will continue to progress. On the food service side, we are not having as great a year as the prior year. I believe it was mentioned earlier, the changes to some of the federal benefits. Those federal benefits are used for direct certification for free and reduced lunch for our students. So we had a reduction in directly certified students. So we're having to physically try and get families enrolled, which is not as easy of a process. And that enrollment is not retroactive. It is only looking forward. So that has certainly hurt our state and federal source revenue. So we continue to push that agenda going forward so we can continue to have a healthy fund, but it is not performing as well. So the timing for Chartwell's couldn't be better.
Just to check for my own understanding, you're saying that the bar for being approved to receive free or reduced lunch went up?
So that you can either physically apply, fill out an application
Right.
to be on free or reduced lunch, or what we get is direct certification. So if students are on SNAP or receiving Medicaid or some sort of federal assistance, we get a list from the state, and those students are automatically enrolled the whole way back in the beginning of the school year. with the reductions at the federal level to some of those benefits.
Oh.
A lot more students are not automatically enrolled. So now we're having to reach out to families to try to get them to apply for benefits with bad phone numbers and bad
Got
email addresses. And every day they're not enrolled, it's not a retroactive enrollment. Every day they're not enrolled, there's no collection.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any questions on food service or capital projects?
A quick question for capital projects, more around the, I guess it's more of the broader budget. I guess, yeah, this is, so as we're receiving bonds to pay for the projects that we've already moved forward with, what are we looking in terms of end of year transfers into the capital? I guess it's a little different from this, into that capital reserves. Are we in a place to still do that? I can remember you saying we had to contribute something to that.
So this is actually two different accounts together. One account is cap reserve, the other is cap projects. Cap projects captures the bond and all the expenditures and records it in a separate ledger. So that's all kept on a separate list. Those expenditures are tracked separately. The bond is issued with a purpose, Cedar Brook and Brightside, so we can't use it for the stadium. So all the stadium expenses are really coming out of the cap reserve. All the Glenside and Cedar Brook are coming out of that bond issue.
Right. So related to the capital reserve, and that's what I'm saying, it's a broader budget conversation. Is there a requirement for us to contribute something into that capital reserve every year?
There's not a requirement.
There's not a requirement. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll stop there. Because I thought there was.
All right, moving on to the Act One timeline. Obviously, we are here in June, and we are at the point where we are about to approve the final budget. So if you recall, back in February, we presented a preliminary budget, and we were projecting $146 million of revenues, and we were coming up with those revenues with no tax increase and a spend of our fund balance of $5.8 million. When we got to our proposed final budget, we had found savings and we had adjusted our staffing across all buildings and proposed a tax increase to close that gap, and we were down to a $750,000 deficit. I'm happy to say that between the time the final budget was approved and now, we found additional attritional savings within our staff. We've had some better than anticipated collections on the local revenue side that we were able to adjust, including some of the interest income estimates, and that has helped on the revenue side as well. So at the end of the day, we were able to eliminate that $735,000 deficit, and we have a balanced budget. So a total revenue collection of $144,636,832, and expenditures likewise.
Yeah. That's yourself.
Okay.
Balanced budget.
Good night. Can we do it? Is that like, can we?
Do that, honey, hooray.
Oh, the honey hooray.
The honey array. I do have a question, not to,
Rain on my parade.
no, it's right on my parade. That is,
a right.
thank you so much for the amount of work, energy, conversations that I'm sure that led to this result that I know you helped lead, and Dr. Scriven, I know you also helped lead, and the rest of the administration was involved with. About the interest, how much interest revenue is incorporated into this revenue?
So we're a little under $2 million. Well, first off, I want to say I don't deserve all the credit. It was 100% a team effort between the administration, principals, curriculum directors, all of you. There's about $2 million of interest income allocated, which I still think we can do better than, but we now have a new Fed Reserve, so I don't. But I believe the same Fed Reserve Board, so there's a little uncertainty what that looks like.
And it's really helpful to understand just because that is not we don't know what the future holds, but in some ways that is a soft landing towards possibly closer to 500,000 someday, or maybe even we used to be looking at tens of thousands from that particular line item, which is just to say, this is great. We're still gonna need to think of that $2 million of interest income over the next 5 years strategically as potential to become
Will of that, right?
something that goes away. So that's all. So yay, and we still have lots of work to do, of
Yeah.
course. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts?
I guess a follow-up to that is that to that end, the amount that we have budgeted for the revenue from the interest income is, I think, still a conservative estimate for next year.
That's
And yeah, that's been the idea, I think, every year is to be conservative and hope we, take what we can get essentially. Great, thanks.
So on the revenue side. Yeah, still.
Sorry, gosh.
So on the revenue side, as I mentioned earlier, there's really two things driving the entire budget this year. And it is not just specific to Cheltenham, it is statewide, and that is assessment reduction that is impacting revenues and special education costs, which are increased. And it doesn't matter what school district you read about on the news, you're probably going to see those two things mentioned as primary reasons for budget woes this year. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a 3.5% increase in real estate taxes needed to balance the budget without pulling from reserve. The major impact revenue was our assessment decline. And as you recall, real estate taxes make up 69% of our entire revenue budget. I always like to look at everything in graphical format. So all of our local real estate tax, earned income tax, IDA money is represented by this blue block, and the vast majority of this blue block is real estate taxes in one form or another. Taking a look at our assessment under which we tax, you can see we've almost lost 5 years of assessment value due to just the changing economic environment of the world. This is a close-up view, so we're starting at 1.8 million. We're looking at what it looks like between 1.8 and 1.9. We have an exaggerated view of what this looks like, but if we zoom way out, it's a really flat looking line.
You could even do a third mini one that goes all the way down to 0, and it truly would look like.
Sorry, I thought this was just fun on how graphs can be a little misleading. But yeah.
I appreciate the. Yeah.
All right, on the expenditure side, all the unfunded mandates by the state continue to drive some of our budget woes. That would be our payments in the PSERS continue to increase. Our mandated special education costs continue to be unfunded. Our charter school costs continue to be completely unfunded, and our transportation elements of our transportation are unfunded as well. Special education costs, as mentioned earlier, are growing faster than our Act 1 index, and that is not unique to Cheltenham School District. That is a statewide trend. And we continue to have wage pressure, obviously, with inflation means wage pressure upward. Our Act 1 index is 3.5, which is indicative of the 3.3 to 4% wage increases seen statewide. I included this graph because employee benefits and wages, we are looking at 66% of our entire budget. If we include staff personnel, we're probably well over 70% of our entire budget is just personnel. I pulled this data from the Pennsylvania Department of Education on the annual financial information we report. This is just a graphical representation of what special ed spending is looking like on a per student basis on a regional level in red and on a state level in red, or in bluish green. And what you can see in the past several years, the rate, just in the past few years alone, the rate has increased seemingly exponentially. I also like this chart as the graphical representation of all of our fastest growing expenditures. So we talk about the mandated costs from pension, We talk about the mandated costs from charter schools. Pension is a very big number. It's a $20 million contribution from the district, and it dwarfs all of our other largest expenditures by a lot. And you can see charter schools way down here. We were talking about how it's relatively flat since after COVID, since the number of students transitioned to online learning. So it has been a very stable number. It shows that very well. Special ed, you can see our trend very much matches the state level. This drastic upward movement. And some of the other trends are a little more difficult to see. Obviously, with transportation, we had no transportation during COVID, so there was a significant drop. But if we tried to level that out, it's a little more stable. Debt service is obviously much more stable, and healthcare costs. We have a recent rising trend, but not to the degree of some of our other expenditures. And this is the dollar amount of what those mandated costs, or how those mandated costs are booked. So going back to 2012, the blue represents what the state pays for, the red represents what the federal government pays for, and the green represents what our local tax effort pays for in terms of special education, charter school, and pension costs that they require the district by law to spend money on. And you can see the red bar has almost not grown at all over that entire period. The blue bar has grown, but not to the amount of what the green bar is. So what used to be a $12 million contribution from local taxpayer money and a $5 million state and federal government contribution has become a $15 million federal and state contribution and a $33 million local taxpayer contribution.
Just some context while we're here, going back to the question presented a little earlier. We're also, obviously the state is going through its own budget process as well. As we talk about unfunded mandates, the charter school reform, unfortunately doesn't look like it's getting substantial movement in this cycle, which we know could save our district somewhere around $250,000 to $300,000 annually. So unfortunately, that's not, so those were going to remain the same, unfortunately. And as we think about next school year, there's some mandates around science-based, evidence-based reading that is going to take into account as well, that currently is not funded via the state. And then as we think about the cell phone ban as well, represents another unfunded mandate. And so this could look probably not 33 to 36, but that number would only increase as we look through the next couple of years for what's already been passed or what's looked like will be passed in the next months.
Looking at our Act 1 index, only twice in the past 20 years has the district had it higher than Act 1 index, adjusted Act 1 index. So this year was 3.5%. Our market value aid ratio has always been below 4, except for those two outlying years. So as we discussed in prior meetings, the market value aid ratio is a measure of household income per student and household wealth per student. And you can see every district is kind of moving in the same trajectory. Well, most districts in the lower Montgomery County are moving in the same trajectory. So red is Abington. We are here. We are Cheltenham. I believe this is Jenkintown. This is Lower Moreland. So we're all kind of experiencing this same upward trend, and we're all seeing similar market value aid ratios. So translating that Act 1 index, that 3.5% as to against Cheltenham School District tax rates over the past number of years, you can see since 2016, Cheltenham School District has not increased taxes greater than the Act 1 index. In fact, most years it has been below during that time period. So something I wanted to definitely highlight, particularly in this year and particularly in this period. So we talked about a 3.5% tax increase. If we look at the median home assessment in Cheltenham, it's $143,000. And what does that 3.5% tax increase mean for an individual with the median home assessment? It means it's approximately an increase in their tax bill of $284 a year or $24 a month. Some additional example home assessments are included as well. If it's your annual home assessment is $250,000, that's approximately $495 or $41.27 a month. So how have other school districts taxes increased over the past 5 and 10 year cycles? And what is the current proposed tax increase across the county? So what is the lay of the land? When I rank the 10-year tax rate change in the county, Cheltenham is on the lower end. So going back to this graph, because of the effort and because of the work to do as much as possible to not meet the taxing obligation or to reach that Act 1 index, Cheltenham has in essence been on the bottom of this list. These are all proposed final tax increases as well. So you can see a lot of districts are in the same boat with a 3.5% tax increase. Even if you look at the district's 5-year change, it's relatively low in comparison to the rest of the county. But I guess the point of this is to show that a lot of work has gone in the past 10 years prior to me. A lot of you on the board were here then, but we weren't necessarily coming from a good spot when everyone became a board member or an employee of the district.
Oh, yeah,
That's their proposed final budget.
but they had to pass a referendum.
They have not.
to get to, or they did pass, no?
They
They passed, yeah.
applied for- they applied
Yeah, that's
for
what I thought. Yeah, right. Yeah, it did.
But this isn't a voted appointing. Some of these have voted.
Right. Oh, I see what
Oh, I
you meant. This has
By
not
the
been voted
board.
on by the board. Yes. I was
Well-
like, no, the referendum.
I put a star. I think the only one I found was Springford
They've already
that they voted, so I put a little star on that. And I think someone else voted. It was also 3%.
Mr. Bordello.
Yep. Love this slide.
Yeah.
Love the result of the slide.
Yeah.
Also just recognizing the work. As board members, I know that I've been a part of a number of conversations with many of us and other community members who are constantly wondering, oh, hey, these taxes are so high. And note constantly in those discussions, all of the work that you just referenced that has gone on over a number of years. From the administration in partnership with, again, lots of energy from the board related to managing our tax increases. We know that we cannot change the history of the tax increases. They are what they are. They were handed to you and to others, through numerous activities over time, but appreciate the ongoing management of expenses and also bringing that information here for us as well as for the community. This slide in particular, but in addition to that, conversations related to transparency around expenses and descriptions even for what some of the maybe more ambiguous terms might mean is very helpful. All that to just recognize that and appreciate the work that you're doing and reflecting on what we see. Look forward to continuing the trend as best we can.
Well, I think I can't speak for prior to when I got here, but I think we have a lot to show for, what's been accomplished in the past couple of years with not increasing taxes to pay for a stadium project, which is not only beneficial to our high school students, but is a large investment in what would be a future high school project that will now not have to be touched. So using some money that we didn't have to spend during COVID. And this is in essence an investment into the future of that site and when that high school has to be renovated. So we're not creating a giant referendum to pay for everything on that parcel of land. We've also had some significant investments in curriculum, particularly this past year, which have advanced learning in the district. So, hopefully more to come.
Mr. Schultz?
Unless somebody else first.
Oh, yes.
Just
Um,
admiration.
So, plus one to what Mr. Friedel Williams just said, and I will point out that the work that went into this bottom quartile was very much a product of negotiations and strategic planning and effective allocation of existing resources to accomplish our district's mission within our means. So like it's a shout out to the whole administrative team and board across not just this committee, but also educational affairs and also policy and all, anything that involves work that has to be done is going to cost something, whether it's a new initiative or an ability to do more with, and in some cases with less when we talk about attritional savings. So I'm kind of, it is profound that we were able to, during these years, be so far below Act One, particularly around post-COVID years, while also pursuing the EP restructuring and the fact that we are not looking at, I won't call out any particular district, but double-digit tax increases while also addressing a need that we knew was a need around EP for over a decade. So just kudos to everyone here right now that helped get that. I have a quick question about, because I've heard the question asked, and I just want to make sure I'm able to give effective answers. When we look at the decrease of assessment, first off, it looked like around $20 million. The zoomed in, zoomed out bottom line is it's around a $20 million drop. And when we're looking at, I think it's 54.7 mils, that means for every $1 million down, that is $54.7 thousand of revenue lost. So 20 times that equals around $1 million. Just putting that was useful for me. Why are those assessments going down? Is it a local, a regional, or a national trend? Is there, I think the route that I get asked is, are we doing something wrong here in Cheltenham that's causing our assessments to go down? Or is it just something that's just happening?
So I guess I want to say regional. I can only speak for Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
When you get your tax bill, you can see this is my house, this is my home assessment. That's not my home value. Why is my assessment different from the value? And that's because the Board of Assessments hasn't done or hasn't revalued the entire county since 1998. So you're looking at an estimated 1998 value because there's been no reassessment done for 28 years. So the way things are transacted is the state has a tax equalization board that creates a formula that tries to equate what your assessment is on your tax bill versus the fair market value. So when somebody challenges the fair market value of their tax bill, they have a way to marry the two that everybody can understand. And the further you get away from that reassessment, the wilder these fluctuations get. So in the past several years, that ratio formula has been driving values down on paper, maybe not necessarily in the real market, but on the way what they call the STEB value, the state tax equalization board value, has been holding those values together.
And are those values Cheltenham specific, or is it across the entire state? There's a formula, or is it county?
So Montgomery's last reassessment was 1998.
Mm-hmm.
I think Philadelphia's was much more recent, so they're closer to 100%. You look at Bucks County, I think they're 1972 or something crazy like that, or they're a really old assessment. And other counties are 100%. They're, every year they're creating new value.
Understood. But the number, the adjustment is that Montgomery County properties get a multiplier of their
Yeah, it's by county, each county.
county, so it's not a Cheltenham specific thing, county specific thing. And then the other side is when we talk about assessment appeals that may or may not go our way, those are often commercial properties, and I imagine that those are often driven by larger economic trends
Correct.
versus.
You have that formula, and you have obviously office space isn't carrying value what it used to be the way it used to be because of the work from home aspect.
This is a very useful thing. That's it for me.
All right, I won't spend a lot of time on the slide because it is getting late. This is my very rough projection looking 5 years out. If we assume a 1.75% real estate tax increase annually, and we assume a percentage of growth and expenditure categories, seeing this minimal tax increase and no changes in our current expenditure structure, you can see that this loss balloons pretty quickly over time if we don't take current measures to live within our means, try and renegotiate every contract, which is something we do in our office, try and renegotiate every contract. If I get something across my desk that's a 7% increase, it's getting negotiated, it's getting sent back, and we're trying to find a way to make it not happen, or thinking about an alternative to what we're doing. So I just wanted to present this out there, to show if we, keeping the status quo, not making changes to the way we're spending, and having a minimal tax increase, the trend isn't necessarily in the district's favor on a 5-year review. All right, seatbelts on. I'm going through this piece quick. There's still a lot.
One sentence left.
All right, so the legislative meeting for approval, the district is recommending approval of Cheltenham Transportation to be approved on the renewal option for an additional 5 years. We looked at this a couple months ago, and we found that renewal, the percentage increases are significantly less than surrounding districts. It will put us in a position where we will have some of the lowest transportation rates in the county in just a few years. In addition, if we do it early now instead of next year, we get a $200,000 contribution into the Cheltenham Education Foundation. I won't go over this again, but that data is here. We talked about the MCIU shared services agreement. Our IDA money that comes from the federal government is used to pay for this programming. These are shared services from the IU for emotional support, multi-disabled support, related PCAs, student transition services, and autistic supports at a total cost of $2 million. And that appears in the special ed 330 professional services line.
Quick question. Are they providing all of those services directly, or in some cases they're using a third party to deliver the service?
In some cases, they're using a third party.
I'll stop.
Each year we approve the school district's bank accounts. We primarily use collateralized collective local government institutions, which are the safest that we could possibly put our money in. Like they're being fully collateralized, we're insured not just up to $250,000. We are also approving the business office to make the necessary decisions to invest funds. We are approving the selection of cooperative purchasing agreements that exist out in the world. We're approving myself, the purchasing director, and my assistant to be the purchasing agents of the district. We're approving the next year's school district insurance rates, which is a very modest increase year over year, and keeping the same insurance carriers, primarily Utica. Also to be approved at the next legislative meeting are the lunch prices for the upcoming year. Seeing as how we have had surpluses in the past several years, we are keeping those prices flat. We are not recommending an increase, and we are not required to have an increase by the state as long as we have a positive each year. We are recommending that be reapproved as a treasurer, trying to get this in the cycle so we don't miss it. No additional compensation. Which is common.
You get thanks.
Approval of tax levy, no change to real estate transfer taxes, mercantile taxes, net profit taxes, local services taxes, and then the last is the recommended approval of the increase in millage rate on real estate taxes. Approval of the homestead farmstead allocations. So this year we're getting $5,056,000 allocated from the fund to spread amongst all homeowners who applied for the homestead reduction, which it accounts for approximately $645 on the average assessment. So it's quite a bit of savings. We're approving real estate tax installments, the ability for taxpayers to pay on installment dates, and we are approving the discount and penalty periods for this coming year as well. And that is it.
Well, that's almost a lot.
Is the homestead passed through from the federal?
The homestead is the gambling bill that went in place. I forget what year.
Because it keeps going up and up over the last 5 years or so.
As it continues to generate more money, they take that fund and then they allocate so much to property tax relief. So in the past couple of years, it has gone up because that fund has performed well. And then we take the number of households that have applied for that homestead money, and it's our allotment, $5 million divided by the number, roughly.
Do we know what percentage of our community is registered as having a homestead?
I have no idea.
Like, do we have access? Not do you know right now, but is that something that can be known? The reason I ask is because there are community members that are not taking advantage of it. I know it's one chunk of money, and it is that divided by the number of applicants, but nevertheless.
I think we have 11,100 taxable parcels.
Okay.
That includes commercial, and 7,838.
Thank you.
So I don't know I don't know how to interpret that other, those are numbers.
Yeah.
On that, in that same vein, they apply through the state, not through us.
We send a mailing out every
We send
year.
them- Oh. Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry.
Real useful,
Sorry
thank
for
you.
so quick.
Seeing no comments publicly, I'll await Mr. Felton's vote.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, the third, this meeting is adjourned.